Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Fargione, the manager of field research and outdoor programs at the Cary Institute of Ecosystem Studies. I want to welcome you to tonight's presentation, which is titled Butterflies and Skippers, Tracking Nature's Clock. First, I'd like to do a quick introduction for any new visitors. The Cary Institute of Ecosystem Studies is an independent ecological research and educational organization. Our scientists study forests and fresh waters, urban ecosystems, and the ecology of diseases like Lyme disease. They work in field sites here in the United States and around the world. Our main headquarters is here in southeastern New York State, and our land has been set aside as an outdoor laboratory, but parts of the property are open to visitors during the months of April through October. And I hope after this presentation, you'll take time to check out our website and learn about opportunities to visit us and enjoy some of our walking trails. Now, a couple of notes about the mechanics of tonight's program. If you hover your mouse over the bottom of your screen, you will see the chat feature pop up. We'd like, and we hope that folks would enter into the chat who they are and where they're coming from. We'd love to know more about our audience. We will be turning the chat function off shortly once the presentation starts, but don't worry, during the program you can put your questions or your comments into the Q&A feature, and that's also on the bottom of the screen. And we're going to have plenty of time at the end to answer any questions you have. Our speaker this evening is Cary's resident naturalist, Barry Haydasz. Barry has a wide-ranging knowledge of many plants and animals found here at Cary, but he has a particular passion and expertise with butterflies. And normally he does this presentation with an in-person hike out on the property. Tonight, Barry's added to his program a short video, which is a walk to give us a feel for as if we were all out there together looking at butterflies. So that should be a lot of fun. Don't worry if you miss any details. We'll be sending you a link to tonight's presentation recording. And in addition, we'll provide you with a link to some related resources that are on our website in case you want to continue to explore this topic in more detail. And so with that, I'll turn the program over and say, take it away, Barry.
Thanks, Mike. What I'd like to do is first I'd run a little PowerPoint that I have that I usually run at the beginning of these walks. It covers frequently asked questions. And we can see if there are any questions after that, and then I can launch into the actual video of the walk that we took. So let me start that PowerPoint. There. So one of the first things is people ask about what are the differences between butterflies and moths. There's a number of generalities, but they are, well, generalities, and there's always exceptions. One of the first things is moths are nocturnal and butterflies are diurnal, day flying. But well, over on the right, we have a moth that's clearly active during the day. Moths are usually kind of drab and butterflies are thought of as being bright, but the butterfly on the left is quite black and the moth on the right has a bright orange head and neck. The butterflies will rest with their wings kind of folded together straight up over the back, and moths generally have them flattened out. And we're kind of seeing that with the moth here. And the butterfly isn't really resting, it's active. Moths tend to have thick, stout, hairy bodies. This one is pretty slim and trim, and this butterfly is how you would expect. Now, the main thing is the antenna. The butterflies have a club on the end of the antenna, and moths have all different kinds of antenna, but never with the club. Another question is about how long does a butterfly live? How does a moth live? Generally, they spend a week or so in each of the 4 life stages, and that's about it. Some of them have like one cycle through the year, one generation, and others have several. Now, winter kind of interrupts all of that. Everybody knows about the monarch migrating for the winter. They'll leave the cold. Let's see, on the East Coast, they go to Mexico. On the West Coast, they've got places in California. Not a bad deal either way. Then they come northward in the spring, following the milkweed, because that's what their caterpillars eat. No one makes a full round trip. And another question is, how many are there? Well, you should be able to expect to find about 100 wherever you are, but that 100 would mean you'd have to really cover all the different types of habitats, elevations, things like that. So in Dutchess County, you could expect 90, 100, and I've seen, I think that's dated. I probably have about 75 butterflies at Cary now, but you're probably not going to find them all in one day. So the walk that we're featuring today, we started at Gifford House. We went up the little dirt road towards the carriage house, and we took a walk about the old hayfield. Then we go around the Sedge Meadow. This is a very wet area, so we're finding wet area butterflies. And then we go through the woods and along the creek. So that's a whole nother thing. We're in deep woods. We come out at the top of the fern glen. There's a fen back here, another kind of wetland. And then we take a walk down Lovelace Drive for some more open fields. And what kinds of things we're going to find. Here is a chart of butterflies and the different habitats along the trails. So something like cabbage white, you find in big numbers in almost every habitat. This is a generalist. This thing can be found anywhere. Something like the Appalachian brown is a swamp specialist. We'll find that in the fern glen and the sedge meadow trail. There was one at the old hayfield. Why the old hayfield? If you remember the map, the old hayfield borders the sedge meadow. Everybody has to travel around a little bit. Now, phenology, that's one of the main points. We have a phenology program at the Institute here. Vicki Kelly has been running that, and that's something, it's a citizen science. You can get involved in that too. It's biological timings. So Eastern Tiger Swallowtail, from this chart, we're showing population or how many you would find on a count and through the months. So we've got a surge around May, and then they taper off. There's a second generation in the later part of the summer. So here's a butterfly that has 2 main broods during the year. Here's the great spangled fritillary or fritillary. So my personal use for phenology is, if we're going to take a walk, I can look at my charts like this and see, well, are we going to find great spangleds today? June, July, you bet. Now, when you start doing some number crunching, these are all the regular butterflies that have been coming throughout the years here. And this is what day of the year that they would arrive. So day of year, well, 30 days in a month here, 90 is 2 months, 3 months. So here they start showing up in March and April. So these are the first ones to arrive: Eastern Comma Spring Azure and Zabulon, Viceroy. These are showing up at the end. And I'm comparing them to the average from 2004 to 2020. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on. It looks like they were maybe a little bit early here, then they were a little bit later there. If we straighten out those lines, making averages, we have a better look at it. So indeed, it looks like the this year's were coming in a little bit later than average. And then towards the end of the summer, they were coming a little bit earlier than average. Going over things like this with Vicki, our phenology person, again, she was going, well, you know, we do these charts a little differently usually. take the same information, but organize it this way with the years and the arrival times and one species at a time going across. So here's your tiger swallowtail. And across the years, you can see that it's been showing up again around that March, April time period. Now, if we take all the species, we get something pretty scary looking. They call this a spaghetti chart. And again, if we go and average this out, there's our average species arrival throughout the years. It looks like it's getting a little bit later. And again, if we straighten it out, put in an average line, we can see that over these 10, 15 years here, it looks like they've been coming in a little bit later. But 10 or 15 years is nothing on a geological scale. Every time I run this, that line looks pretty different. It takes a little more time, but this is how you can gather information and analyze it. That's phenology. So what are the things that affect timings? Everybody knows about planting your garden. That's going to depend on temperature. Where'd everybody go? I didn't do that. There it is. So problems that wildlife can have, for example, if the caterpillars hatch out before the leaves are there, they're not going to do well. Birds can have problems if caterpillars and their eggs hatching aren't timed, synchronized well. And again, we have the phenology trail going through the fern glen, and citizen scientists can come in and just monitor plants. We've got a number of plants that are marked, and you just observe what their stage is, and that all gets recorded in a database, and it's interesting. Threats to butterflies, that's where I used to live. So habitat loss is a big deal. Insecticides, butterflies are insects. So insecticides kill insects. We connect the dots there. Pollution is not bad for just humans, but everything. There's a number of things are threatening butterflies and everything. There's butterfly conservation, what you can do. There's a lot. There's organizations, there's clubs. This is some of the information that I think Mike will have prepared for download. This list, for example. We could talk about those later. There's, again, there are organizations. North American Butterfly Organization is top of my list. And that's our PowerPoint there.
So if anyone has any questions, you can enter them at the bottom of your screen into the Q&A window, and we'll offer them to Barry. And if not, we'll continue on. We'll give it a second here, Barry, to see if anything comes up. There were a couple of questions that were in the chat before we started, and a number of people from Illinois and North Carolina and New York City mentioned that they thought they were seeing fewer butterflies this year. And so I just wondered whether you had any thoughts on that.
It's been noted by experts that butterflies and all insects have been declining over the years. It's a worrisome thing. I meant to actually look through all my numbers, my own personal numbers of Cary, to see what was happening this year, and I didn't quite get that far. I think I've been seeing a good variety so far. Just this week, actually, there was the trial report for this week has a number of interesting things. So
you haven't noticed any fewer ones here at Cary this year, at least?
This year seems not bad.
Okay. Barry, a question about what is a skipper?
Skippers are sort of that missing link that's not really missing between butterflies and moths. They're always in the back of the butterfly book. So we always kind of refer to them as butterflies, but technically they're in between butterflies and moths. They're kind of stout and hairy bodied like a moth, but they're day flying like a butterfly. They're usually kind of browns and drabs like moths. but they've got a club on the end of the antenna, but it's a hooked club. So they're kind of in the bird world. They speak of LBJs, little brown jobs. So we're talking about sparrows and finches that are really kind of hard to distinguish among their an acquired taste. And skippers fill that role in the butterfly world. They're small and brown and fast, and they can be tricky to tell apart.
Barry, do they look or act differently than other butterflies?
They have their own quirks and things. They're very fast, and they have this kind of a bouncing flight and that's where the name skipper comes from. The way they perch, butterflies will open up their wings for the sun. There's other butterflies that lean over sideways to get the sun, but skippers are peculiar. They put their hind wings down flat, and their forewings are up at a 45-degree angle. It's something that just they do.
Another question for you, Barry. It's not supposed to be a great year for monarchs, but this person is seeing lots of them in Brooklyn. What are you seeing, and does that make any sense?
I've been seeing monarchs around here, I think in better numbers than previous years. Monarchs, of course, been facing tremendous problems there. Let's see, over the last, 2 or 3 decades, their population has dropped by 90%. It's, and why is this happening? It looks like there's probably a variety of things. They talk about habitat loss again. One of the big things they're pointing at is herbicide spraying in the Midwest, taking out all the milkweed. The caterpillars eat milkweeds, only very closely related things. So all the milkweeds on the roadside are being taken out, so they have nothing to eat. Those are a couple of big things. The pesticides, there's a lot of things. And there are organizations devoted to monarchs, to monarch conservation, to monitoring monarch populations. There's groups that go out. Again, I mentioned that there are overwintering sites in Mexico and in California. So people go out there and try to assess those overwintering populations. And when you do that from year to year, you get an idea what's going on. And then there are counts, people that are doing bird counts during migrations. There's also people out there monitoring butterflies, and especially monarchs. So there's a lot of people watching. There's a lot of ways to get involved.
Barry, there's quite a few questions about monarchs. When they migrate to Mexico, what happens? Does that insect return to the Northeast?
It starts to. Again, it's in the fall. There's a period where they stop feeding. They kind of mill around, and then when the weather's right, when the wind is right, they take off and head down. So that's one individual that makes the whole trip down. Then they have the places where they overwinter, and those have special characteristics so that they can survive. It's sort of a hibernation. It's a torpor. They're in a less animated state. And in the spring, they start following the milkweed up. They'll lay their eggs, and then they die. The eggs hatch, caterpillars pupate. Then those adults fly up farther, and it takes 4 or 5 generations to get from Mexico to New York or Canada. So it's no one individual makes the entire round trip.
Barry, your data showed that butterflies seem to be arriving later this year than over the last 15-year average. Any ideas what's going on there? Is it related to temperature?
That's, again, 15 years isn't a real big time span to get a real good idea of what the long-term trend is. when I make that chart every year, there was a spot 2012. Maybe people remember how incredibly early everything was, and in that chart it put a big notch in there. And when I ran the average line through that, it looked like they were coming earlier one day a year. So, that would have been, if that were the trend for like 100 years, that would be, earth shattering. But again, every year that I run this chart, it's only 10 years. So that line changes.
So we've had question about other resources, particularly resources about lepidopteran behavior or ecology, not just ID. And I believe your resources include some of that, do they not?
Yeah. There's a number of books. There's a Butterfly Watcher's Handbook by, I think, Michael Pyle. That's a fun book that's on the list. There's another book, I think, Insect Lives, that could be on the list. But that's why, that's a wonderful thing. That's an insect on a pin. You can study carefully. You can look at how many spurs there are on the end of the tibia. That's important for identification, and that's hard to see in the field. But the way it moves, how it responds, you can't see that from a bug on a pin, and that can make all the difference. There's bird watchers know a woodpecker when it flies by because it's got that undulating flight. Well, a skipper because it's skipping by. So
a couple of questions for you, Barry, that are right up your alley about milkweed. That one person has said, we've heard that some of it is invasive, and what's the best way to get milkweed that isn't invasive?
I don't know about a milkweed that's invasive.
The other question that's come up related to this is about black swallowwort. Perhaps that's what we're talking about.
I think I've heard of that. No, I have a personal battle with black swallowwort. It's related to milkweed, and monarchs recognize that, and they'll lay their eggs on it. But it's 100% fatal to the caterpillars. My next question was, well, how often do monarchs select black swallowwort over milkweed? And I did find a study on that, but the results range between 20 and 80%. I think I need to read that again and see if I've really got all the information, or see if there's any other studies on that. But black swallowwort is invasive. It is a fascinating study in survival tactics, just the things that it can do to reproduce and spread. It's just amazing.
Let's do one more, Barry, before you take us on your walk.
Very good.
6-year-old Milo says he's caring for a woolly bear caterpillar and
Yay,
feeding
that's
him
great.
dandelion leaves. And what should he do to take care of him?
It sounds like you're doing the right thing. If you found the right thing to feed it, that's good. And making sure that it's got fresh food every day, and that it's where you're keeping it is clean. You got to clean out all the frass, all the caterpillar poop. You don't want them to get too humid, they get moldy. You don't want them to get too dry, then they desiccate, they dry out. It sounds like you've got it worked out there. Now you don't want to bring it inside for the winter, because that throws them all off. They'll hatch out to an adult in the middle of the winter, and then what? They have nobody to play with. It's tragic. So keeping them, if you have a container, a cage with screen, you can keep it in the garage or the side of the house so that it's out in the natural elements that it's used to. I think they'll usually let's see, I think they survive the winter as a caterpillar, and then in the spring they'll actually pupate. So just some leaf litter that they can go under and hang out for the winter.
Perfect. Thanks, Barry. So why
Yeah.
don't we turn it back over and you can reshare your screen and take us on a walk.
Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Barry Haydasz. We're at the Cary Institute of Ecosystem Studies today, and we're going to look for butterflies. Some of the things I like to have with me for that purpose: close focus binoculars. If you can get about 2 feet away, that's really good. They make close focus binoculars just for butterfly watching. A camera with a good zoom is a really great tool, so you can get those. If you don't have a long time to study butterfly, if you can just get a good photo, then you can go to your books or online. These vests are really nice. You can carry plenty of water and field guides. The Golden Guide is a must-have. This is like my original. The cover is a little different now, but this covers butterflies, it covers moths, it shows you the adults, it shows you the caterpillars, shows you their favorite foods. You can't beat that. You don't get that much in a big book. If this will get you close. It doesn't show you every single one there is, but this will get you close. So this is a really great place to start with. And if you want more detail, that's my favorite. There's plenty of others out there, but I like that one. Let's go see what we can find. So dirt roads are great places. You find a lot of butterflies, especially after the rain. They'll come and stop, and you'll see them at the edges of puddles or even just on the dry road itself. And it's not as much the moisture that they're looking for, but they're taking up salts and minerals. These are usually males, and this gets incorporated into the package when they mate. Here's some pearl crescents. Let's see if somebody sits down for us. Pearl crescents fly pretty low. They're not too fast. And again, this is where your close focus binoculars are really, really handy. Now this one, they do like to sit in the sun, open and close their wings, so you can get a pretty good look at both sides. And that can be really helpful with chickier species. You really want to see both sides. And we can continue. So something else we're finding on the road here is eastern-tailed blue. They disappear very easily. First I'll try to, I think it went on that leaf. And there come, and I don't see it anymore.
It went that way.
Maybe that's why. Okay. So we're back close to Gifford House. This is the first hayfield, the old hayfield that you come to, and we've got our wild bergamot coming out now. This is just as good as milkweed for attracting butterflies. There's plenty of things in here right now. There's a great spangled fritillary, or fritillary as you prefer. We've got several of them here. We've got, there's smaller skippers, we've got dun skippers. Here comes a snowberry clearwing. That's a moth, one of the sphinx moths. There's, you've heard of hummingbird moths or hummingbird clearwing. There's a whole group there with several different species. when you have a nice patch like this, you can come out in the morning with your coffee and just hang out. When you're following butterflies, anything knows that it's being followed. But if you're just standing there already when they show up, they'll be much more comfortable and they'll hang out too. So this is, in the early morning, it's a good opportunity to watch them feeding, and they'll alternate between feeding and then going in the sun to warm up again. Ooh, what's this? Virgin tiger moth. This is great. These are so beautiful. This one is obviously flying during the day. They also are active at night. You'll find them at porch lights. Let's see if we can get a closer look.
Probably not.
Oh, we should probably be moving along now. So from the old hayfield, we're just coming to the Sedge Meadow Trail, and up ahead we've got a sunny area. So that's a good place to slow down and start looking around. And right there, it had to be our Appalachian brown. We have a wet meadow over on this side, the Sedge Meadow, and Appalachian browns are swamp specialists. So we should find, there should be some more. We look for them around chest high, waist high. They like to sit on larger leaves, take in the sun. There goes one. Something just flew around my head. Northern pearly eyes fly higher than Appalachian browns. They prefer opener woods, and they'll land on the trunks of larger trees, usually head down. They can be really hard to find. They jump out, fly around your head, and then they disappear. And wait, that's it. That's it. They are so sneaky. They will take some sun. They'll land on leaves too, but they really prefer bigger trees this year. I'd say let's keep on going here. We are approaching the appendix, as I like to call this area, trail marker 10 on the map. It's a great little spot where we've got the Wappingers Creek. We've got mixed coniferous and deciduous. On the other side, there's open fields that come down, so you get a lot of different things all meeting here. And here is a real cool specialist. This is not a butterfly. There are these little burrowing bees. These look like anthills here, but if you sit on the bench and wait for a while, you get to see them come in and leave. These are really cool little things. Now, if you don't have a lot of time to walk, say, the whole trail system, a great thing to do is just come straight down here from the Gifford parking lot. There's a bench, It overlooks the creek. I said before about all the different things that happen here, but today we're looking for banded hairstreak. They've been out in good numbers this year. They're really handsome things. We have a few different species of hairstreaks, but banded hairstreak is the most common. And you find them sitting sideways like that in the sun. They don't open their wings to the sun. They lean over sideways so that they're perpendicular to get the best exposure and warm up. And they'll sit out here and wait for others to come by. It's males looking for females. And if anything comes by, they all go up in a cloud and arguing. And over the last week, it's been, they've been so numerous this year. There'd be like a cloud of 5 or 6 down on the ground here, 5 or 6 up here in the greens, and then even up higher, another 20 feet or so, there'd be another group. And it's just endless entertainment, much better than TV. They crack me up. There's some more. This is good here with the lighting. You've got a dark background and bright light shining on them. That makes them easy to see. Let's go see what's on Cary Pond's trail. Well, there's not much on Cary Pines today. Let's see what's in the front glen. Well, here we are at the front glen. Let's go take a look at some wetland areas. Oh, something's eaten all the leaves off of this tall meadow rue. Ah, there it is. Well, that's beautiful. This is a Canadian owlet. It's a moth. There's a couple other caterpillars that look like that also. So here we are in the fen area. We've got poor fen. This is acidic. Its minerals are washed out. On the other side is the rich fen. It's alkaline and it's calcium rich as well. So you can actually see the difference in plant life on each side as well. What I'm really interested in is milkweed. This is swamp milkweed. It blooms later than the common milkweed, so you can have a sequence of blooms through the season. And I think we have a monarch caterpillar here. Oh, well, that's interesting. The frass, that's the technical term for insect poop. The frass is green from eating the leaves, or red from eating the flowers. That's interesting. I guess it makes sense. And there's an adult, just hanging out in the sun. It flew around once. It passed around the milkweed, but it settled on a goldenrod instead, just to catch some sun. Now this looks real fresh, not a scale out of place. This must be pretty recently hatched. Very handsome. There we go. Very nice. Let's head around to the front again, front of the pond. We have painted turtle. Painted turtles are resident. There's frogs. Interesting is there's no fish. There is more swamp milkweed. Joe Pyeweed is just coming in. And look at this. This is a giant swallowtail. These, the map shows them all the way up to Canada, the range map, but they've always been more of a southern species, and it's only been the last few years that they've been showing up here, well, on a regular basis. Now that yellow underside and the yellow body, you can see that across the field and know what you've got. Let's get a look at the top side if we can. There we go. The yellow against black on the top is really distinctive too. That's different from any other swallowtail. Nothing that big is going to have that pattern. Yeah, there's the top view. Good. That is, we don't have anything else like that around. Let's see what we can find farther up Lovelace. We're here on Lovelace Drive. Tea House Road is right around the corner here. And we've got this nice big stretch of Monarchs officiosa, wild bergamot. And I think I've said before, this is just as attractive as milkweed is to butterflies. We've got silver spotted skipper, spicebush swallowtail, there's tiger swallowtail right there. I think this is great, but let's wrap this up right here and continue along. And here we are across from the weather station field on Lovelace Drive. And earlier I promised wild oregano that we could get at. And right here is a big patch. And these are cabbage whites. This butterfly came from Europe with the first settlers. This is probably one of the first invasive species. It ranges from coast to coast, Canada to Mexico. And if you've ever tried to grow broccoli, cabbage, anything like that, you'll be familiar with the little green caterpillars. And what's that? Oh, this is Tawny Emperor. This is great. This and its very close relative hackberry butterfly. They both feed on hackberries. They're caterpillars. And I mentioned earlier about if you let butterflies come to you, you'll be amazed how approachable they are, or how approachable we are to them. This is licking salt from our sweat. What? What? Hello? No. I have audience with the Emperor. No, really. Yes, I'll send you a selfie. Gotta go now. Talk to you later. Have we had enough fun for one day? Thanks for being here. I hope we can do this again, maybe in person next time. And remember, you never know what you're going to find, or it's going to find you. Keep your heads up. I should have put the end on there. I didn't get that far.
Well done, Barry. We have a lot of questions.
Oh, thank you.
How are the wildfires out west affecting butterflies? And are they affecting western monarchs' overwintering habitat?
I don't know. I don't know at all. But I can. One way for managing certain fields is by burning. And there's been, that fire happens naturally, but but there's been times when that's been done and it hasn't been done quite right. So they burned an entire area as a conservation effort, and it took out an entire colony of an uncommon butterfly, a rare butterfly. If they had done half of it at a time and then the other half the next year, that would have left so-called refugia. So I can only imagine what's happening to every living thing in those unfortunate areas in California. But I haven't heard anything specifically about that. I can only imagine.
Barry, there are some interesting questions about milkweed, and perhaps you can clear up maybe some confusion that we may have about what's milkweed and what's invasive. People are hearing that some milkweed is invasive and spreads by rhizomes and can take over. One comment is that swamp milkweed is better behaved and not invasive because it's a native. There's a question about tropical milkweeds that are being sold in big box stores. So why don't you tell us a little more about milkweeds?
Yeah, there's a few issues. There's the term invasive to start with. I think that's technically reserved for alien organisms. A native organism, my old mentor Judy would refer to as enthusiastic rather than invasive. So common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, the one that you see most often, that does have a spreading root, a rhizome that is pretty aggressive. I had some growing at the edge of my driveway. I have a little garden there. It was coming up through the blacktop. That colony was relocated. I don't know that swamp milkweed is less rooty than that, if that's the correct botanical term for it. And then there's tropical milkweeds. I've heard one of the things about eating milkweed, the caterpillars eating milkweed has poisons, and the caterpillars are able to eat that and incorporate it in their bodies. That's what makes the caterpillars and then the adults distasteful or poisonous to birds. So how much of the poison is in the plant, that depends on which kind of plant. And I think the tropical milkweeds have a different proportions, and maybe there might even be different grades or compositions. It might not just be one chemical. But so I'm not sure on that, but I do know, yeah, there are differences in how different species behave, growth habits, and the kinds of chemical compositions that they have, what kind of protection that they'll give the monarchs. So there are differences there.
Excellent. You've talked a little bit about the equipment you like when looking at butterflies and skippers. What about clothes? Are there colors you like to wear or avoid, or does it matter?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Birders will try to wear clothes so that they don't stand out and don't startle and scare away a bird. Butterflies, it's like the opposite. I wear bright green, orange and yellow are great. There's been times when I've been looking at a butterfly on a milkweed or something, and I had my field guide open. It landed on the field guide. Why? Because the field guide was bright white in the sun. It was a place to go and get warm. So the colors like the flowers that they feed on, or the colors like them. So orange butterflies are going to check out any other orange butterfly to see if it's one of their own kind, preferably of the opposite sex. So yeah, bright colors are great to wear, and a hat, even a hat with a broad brim, is really good because you're out in the sun so much. So keeping that sun off your neck, and I am definitely a redneck from this pursuit. Oh, the back of your legs always get sunburn out there too. I've learned that's the first place to put sunblock on your calves.
Okay, you've talked about the color of the clothes. What about the color of milkweeds? Are some milkweeds different colors? And do butterflies see them as different colors?
Butterflies see colors. Colors are really important for, again, finding their own kind and finding foods. Uh, different different milkweeds do have different colors, and even the same species, common milkweed, I've seen that range from Cupidal pink to white. The swamp milkweed is a much pinker, a much redder color. Then there's other species of milkweed around here that are, there's a world milkweed that's very pale. That's one that lives in very dry, sandy areas. So there are different milkweeds with different colors. That tropical milkweed is kind of orange. And there's another native milkweed we have that butterfly weed, it's called. It's the one that you find out in old abandoned fields with little blue stem grass. It only grows maybe knee high, but it's like that screaming orange color.
Terrific. A question about insect repellent. Would DEET on your hands harm a butterfly?
That's a real good question. I avoid in wearing insecticidal kind of things, killing. Then there's repellents and there's insecticides. Insecticides kill, repellents just shoo away. If I'm going to wear anything, I try to just be a repellent. But butterflies do land on you, as we've seen. They'll land on the common wood nymphs, will land on your legs, on your socks, on your pant legs. Those tawny emperors, hackberry emperors, they love to land on your hats or on the back of your shirt. So I'm always very conscious of that when I'm going out, and I'll try to avoid using repellents and insecticides and just be very, I live in the middle of the woods, so I've learned an awful lot about ticks. I know what they feel like when they're walking on me. I know what they feel like when they bite me. So that's my main defense. I don't want to encourage anybody one way or another. It's just, that's my own personal approach. Everybody's got to figure out how to deal with life in America now.
Barry, changing subjects slightly, you showed us some interesting solitary bee nests. Would you want to have burrowing bees in your yard is the question.
I would, but then not everybody likes what I like either. I've got some, this is fun. I've got these window boxes that I never water or anything. So they're just kind of sandy soil. And there are these little tiny things. They look like sweat bees, the little tiny ones that land on you. And they're in there every summer. And I walk by them all the time. They never bother me. I don't bother them. I know there are types of bees that don't sting at all. So, and there are books. There's a website that's not in the literature. There's some folks I know that did a study of bees in this area. They came up with, I don't know, 100 species and put out a book. They took the photographs, they did the studies, they put this all together. And I don't have a copy of it, I should, but they do have a website, Ross, I think the name was Ross. I should know before I speak any further, but there's definitely information about this. Xerxes Society, XERCES, they have a pollinator program. They have a whole bumblebee conservation program and a downloadable PDF guide to the bumblebees. So there's information out there.
Barry, some more questions about plants for butterflies and skippers. Can you plant milkweed in a home garden? Can you plant wild bergamot? Is it invasive? Should it be planted instead of or with milkweed? What are your thoughts?
I like them both. Well, we've talked about how aggressive milkweeds can be. Wild bergamot is a mint family, so that spreads. If you have room, that'd be great. If you need to confine it, the typical thing is edging. They've got plastic or metal barriers, 6-8 inches that gets pounded into the ground around the bed to keep the roots from traveling. I don't have any information specifically about bergamot or milkweed. The depth would, I suppose, different plants have their roots growing at different depths, so that would dictate how deep your edging would need to go.
But Barry, some butterflies, moths, skippers are considered invasive. Can you give us an example, and why are they called that, or why are they considered invasive?
Well, in invasive, again, the first thing was that it's alien. It's not native to the area. It didn't grow up here. And then, so that's alien. And then invasive is being alien and spreading, taking over and displacing other species, when it's actually being a problem to native species, when it's disrupting the balance of things before their arrival. That's invasive. So cabbage white, again, that came from Europe and has gone again from coast to coast and Canada to Mexico. Now, has that disrupted other species? I don't know if anybody has been watching from the Mayflower. There are new things coming in all the time. There's a moth. I don't know if it's considered invasive. I'm trying to think of the common name. I think it's called golden underwing, Noctua pronuba. I had, it's a good sized moth. It's flying around now. It's the underwings are orange, and it's as big as, again, like a grasshopper. My first thought was grasshopper when it went by, but then I saw that it was a moth, and going through my books, again, a moth this big with orange underwings, it's got to be in the book, and it wasn't. One day I was flipping through an old field guide from a visit to Germany, and there it was, Noctua pronuba. And so now I knew the name, the Latin name, and I looked it up, and it turns out that it was thought to have arrived in a shipment of lumber in the 80s, and it's been slowly working its way across the country, but it's not considered a problem because it hasn't been eating on anything important of economic value. So it's not eating food crops, it's or commercial crops, but it's just things that things we call weeds. So things are coming in all the time, and whether they're problems or not, that gets determined as we go down the road.
Barry, do butterflies live in every continent except Antarctica?
I think that's the story. Yeah.
Okay. Have there been studies that try to see if there are links between plants and butterflies, to see if the plant and the animal respond in ways to kind of keep linked during the changes in climate? Are they somehow able to adapt to each other?
Boy, I don't know about that, about adapting and changing, but close life or death relationships between insects and plants are well documented. There are, and this is one of the issues about even plants that aren't necessarily invasive. If you have a rare plant and it is pollinated by a rare moth, then those two neither can survive without the other. Now, something shows up like a Buddleia, butterfly bush. Butterfly bush is enormously attractive to butterflies and moths. If it draws a pollinator away from its the plant that depends upon it, then that plant is in deep trouble. So there are relationships that are very, very close and very critical.
Sounds like there's plenty of room for new research there, huh?
I would say.
Barry, one question is that the President Biden asked the Fish and Wildlife Service to reassess the monarch numbers and that monarchs be listed in the endangered species list. And have you heard anything about that?
I can't say I have. No, I don't have anything definite about that. It does sound familiar. There are butterflies that have been proposed for endangered status, and that's a tough thing to do. There's even things like parasites that have been proposed for endangered list, and that's even more difficult to persuade people about. But yeah, the way things have been going for the monarch, it sounds like a good idea to me.
A couple more questions before we end, Barry.
Sure.
One of our listeners is talking about they've stopped mowing the grass on the edge of their lawn and have clumps of plants for pollinators. Any thoughts on how to improve the habitat at your home for butterflies and other pollinators?
Yeah, that's one of the best first things you can do. Nothing. When a close cropped green lawn has been called the green desert. It's virtually lifeless. Letting some areas go a little wild, and you can watch. You can see the things starting to show up there. Leaving a leaf litter. I was talking about I think it was Milo was asking about your woolly bear. They spend the winter in the leaf litter. If you rake up all your leaves and burn them, bye-bye. So leaving leaf litter, leaving those stalky plants instead of cutting all down all those dead stalks in the winter. I've got like Rudbeckia, black-eyed Susan, things like that, and those stalks you'll see goldfinch and other birds coming to them and picking away at the seed heads through the winter. Things with hollow stems, you'll have those solitary bees utilizing those. There's even, excuse me, in some of the pollinator conservation books, handbooks, you can get little hollow stems like that, make them into a bundle, and you've got a apartment house for solitary bees. So leaving things natural in some areas for critters is a wonderful thing to do.
Final question, Barry. Would you recommend any online courses in entomology or about butterflies? Any resources like that you're familiar with, you want to pass on beyond what we're going to send people?
Can't think of anything like an online course. There are lots of places out there for identification. There's North American Butterfly Association is on the list. There's a wealth of information there. There's places like bugguide.org. I think it's helpful in identification. There was a Connecticut Butterfly Association. That's a chapter of North American NABA that has some great literature there, like a checklist of the butterflies with those little phenology charts, so you can see when they come, when they go, what kind of quantities you'll find at different times of year. That's a wonderful thing to have. Massachusetts has a butterfly club with information like that too.
Terrific. Barry, we've reached the end of our time. What a great program and a great set of questions we've received. I think we all want to send Barry a virtual round of applause for this excellent presentation. We really, really enjoyed the walk. I felt like I was out there with you again. I want to also thank the Cary staff who helped us behind the scenes to make
Yes.
this program possible, particularly Leslie Tumblety, who kept us all running tonight. Thank you, Leslie. And to the donors who support us at Cary and make it possible for us to offer free programs like this one. And finally, we thank you, the participants. You've been a great audience. A
Yep.
link to the recording tonight will be emailed to you in a few days. A couple times I've seen that a link to the resources Barry has put together have shown up on the screen, and we'll send that out again. If you have questions or comments or ideas for future programs, we'd love to hear them. We value your feedback. Any last words, Barry?
Thank you, everybody, and everybody that made this possible today.
Thank you all, and good night.
Night.